Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Furneaux, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at CyberSaint's. Welcome to our webinar, CyberSaint's Manifesto, Becoming the Leader in Cyber Risk Management. Today, we're excited to have our founder and Chief Product Officer, Patrick O'Reilly. Here, he's going to dive into how we here at CyberSaint think about the evolving cyber risk management landscape. He's going to talk about the challenges within the cyber market in general with intense inflections of capital, and lots of different cyber startups and the confusion that can cause. And then we're going to talk about how our values as a company and the way that we develop products solves for these challenges in new and innovative ways. So with that, I'll pass it over to Patrick and we'll get started.
Thank you, Allison. Yep, really excited to talk about this topic. Let me just grab the screen here and share a few slides. All right. So Allison prefaced it well. You know, it's been our ambition for quite some time now to become the leader in cyber risk management. It's a very large topic, cyber risk management. It comprises every sector of our economy. It comprises, you know, all of the attacks that we've witnessed over the last few years, methodologies, teams, corporate structure. The list goes on and on. So in some ways, becoming the leader in cyber risk management is setting yourself a challenge akin to Sisyphus, maybe pushing the rock up the hill for all eternity. But it is part of our character here at the firm to set a pretty high bar for ourselves. And I think, you know, to be fair, a lot of the professionals we talk to in companies worldwide, a lot of the system integrators, a lot of the MSPs, they have the very same ambitions. They share the same vision with us. So I'm just going to jump into our first slide here. And I sort of mentioned the aspirations of many. You know, when we started the company 7 years ago, we did what most startups do. We talked to people. We advertised a little bit. We'd get leads and companies would walk through the door and want to discuss their challenges. Effectively, those early engagements were consultative. We would sometimes go on site. My background was in financial and macroeconomic modeling, and cyber was new to me. I had a friend bring me into cyber, but I was also a consultant. So going on the road and actually benchmarking companies on cybersecurity frameworks, like early days, it was DFARS, it was the CSF, it was 853. That was my introduction to it. And that was my introduction to risk analysis as well. It grew out of the engagements around benchmarking actual companies on their cyber posture. So we've kind of made a mission statement here. It's again speaks to our ambition. We envision a world where having a resilient cyber posture is considered critical to every organization's performance. And our mission is to make this vision a reality by building the leader cyber risk management company. Again, I want to qualify these, you know, bombastic statements because they really have to do with our conversations with other companies. This is really a restatement of most of the ambitions of InfoSec teams that we speak to on a daily basis. They are trying to make their companies, their businesses more resilient. They're trying to do it in a rational way. They're trying to do it while maturing their programs and growing. And they're trying to do it in the face of an absolute maelstrom of cyber attacks and criminal gangs that are trying to access their property. So, you know, we're up against it here in cyber. And what I've learned over the years is that the collaborative approach is really the best approach. So, you know, the next blurb here really gets to that. Together, we can forge a path to a secure future where cyber risk management is a business enabler, anchored in understanding, collaboration, and foresight. Again, this is table stakes these days. Cyber risk has really grown up. 5 years ago, calls would be, you know, aspirational in a lot of respects. It would be, we're just trying to get more efficient on this assessment process. We're really just trying to understand these requirements that are being pushed down at us. It has changed a great deal in the last few years. You know, increasing regulation, just best practices spreading across the industry, people talking conferences, NIST, and other standards bodies. Even the federal government in the last couple of years has published quite a few things. The Strengthening American Cybersecurity Act is very big, and it takes some time, I think, for the ambitions of people. And our conversations 7 years ago, 6 years ago, were ambitious conversations. We built the product based on streamlining the processes that InfoSec teams were already working with and benchmarking them on standards that were coming out, but weren't necessarily in wide adoption yet, like the CSF. We made a bet early days that the CSF was going to be very important. We relayed every framework to the CSF. The CSF is a way that you can translate your practice upstairs. So with this approach, we're bringing this into reality. And I'm going to jump into some of the actual nitty gritty of risk management now. So what's happened over the last few years? Well, investors look at cyber and they see compound annual growth rates that are very healthy. And that's the practice of cyber. And that's no mistake. If you look at surveys, Gartner has a great survey of top executives and what their main concerns are for the business. And cyber has ranked, at the top of existential threats for the last few years. And it is, cybersecurity and cyber events and breach events are a major drag on the productivity of our economy generally. Then when you drill into the actual sectors and you look at what's going on across multiple sectors, it's a mess. I remember 2 years ago, I was pulled into talking actively in the media about the Colonial Pipeline issue, about the attacks in Ireland or on their health service. I mean, the cyber criminals are merciless, and they will go after the most important properties in a civilization. So it's not just a threat to individual businesses and companies, but it's a threat additionally to society writ large. So we all know to some extent what the losses are. They're financial, they're reputational, they're socioeconomic disruptions. It's not efficient to have these things happen. It can stop operations. We've just recently seen several cyber attacks that shut down the operations of plants and infrastructure for some time. And then, it can actually impact the physical health of people. We don't hear a great deal about that last result there, death, but when you're going after health organizations and you're delaying certain kinds of diagnostic processes, and it's disastrous what can occur. And it's on all of us to figure out how we can become more resilient in the long run. So it's a collective responsibility, but we can only act in unity if cyber risk is truly understood. I think all of us in the industry understand how to do cyber on a day-to-day basis, but we are always in a reactive posture. For years, the vision of most thought leaders in cyber is, how do we get ahead of this? How do we get out of sort of a point solution, putting out fires, red teaming everything, into a more proactive, analytical foresight mode, where we can actually take actions to make ourselves more resilient and prevent things going forward instead of just putting out fires endlessly. So, navigating the cyber risk landscape. What's gone on? Well, a lot of money is poured into cyber risk. Allison, who was on the call earlier with me, Alice and I sometimes travel. We go to conferences. We speak to analysts. One of the main things about cyber risk is it's not necessarily even agreed upon what cyber risk products are or do. But I'll get to that in a bit. So capital has come in and solutioning has occurred a great deal. So what do professionals face when they try to tackle a more efficient approach to cyber risk? Well, they have to go out and vet a great number of products. They have to do a great deal of due diligence on, some outrageous and sometimes, bombastic claims with respect to what products do. We're highly sympathetic when it comes to that ourselves. We try our best not to make outrageous claims. Most of what I think we've accomplished as a software has been with the collaboration of our customers. So, anything we proffer as a result or additional power in analysis has been collaborative. It's not some mysterious solution in a box. We're not claiming that we have, all of the answers. But what we've done is built a machine that aggregates all of the best practices and insights of our entire customer base and the thought leaders we've spoken to on the R&D side. So what are we looking at with cyber? The challenges posed by cybersecurity are intricate. Well, they certainly are intricate. You look at any existing tooling in the space. You could look at something like the FFIEC CAT tool. Which has a questionnaire at the beginning in order to set sort of a risk level. It gets into network complexity right away. So we're dealing with attack surfaces that are changing in real time. We're dealing with CMDBs that can get murky also at times. Sometimes they're human curated, which is not ideal when you're dealing with tens of thousands of machines or softwares. You're dealing with a vulnerability landscape that has 220,000 open vulnerabilities, and maybe only 160,000 of them are classified. You're dealing with, cloud posture management. You're dealing with supply chain. You want to talk complexity? Supply chain analysis is incredibly complex. So, that's the challenge of that complexity is one thing, but the challenge of actually communicating how you manage that complexity without getting too bogged down is a whole other challenge. And that's another thing we're obsessed with, and our customers have helped us a great deal with. So CISOs are struggling to create a cohesive narrative. I'm not saying that. They come to me and tell me that. They tell me that they're trying to get their message much more simple, much more high impact. They're trying to tell a story that can be digested, but that doesn't necessarily neglect detail, but doesn't highlight an overwhelming amount of detail. So they look to solutions like ours to help them ground the discussion with executives in well-known things like actuarial data sets, the cybersecurity framework, benchmarking a cyber program, not drilling down necessarily into the actual control implementations and tests, but building a story around cyber risk, right, that proposes solutions, relates that to risk, relates it to exposures, and gets buy-in around that, and can also show progress. You need to be able to show progress in order to build trust, and you need to be able to educate a little bit on the fly while you're telling the story. Executives and boards are challenged to understand cyber risk. That is very true. Some are changing right now under the SEC mandate. They didn't come out and require necessarily for boards to onboard direct expertise, but the boards need to be apprised. There is a fiduciary component to cyber risk. It's been there for a long time, but now it's out in the open. Why are they challenged to understand cyber risk? Well, the old days, IT owned cyber to some extent. And, there's a lot of point solutions out there. There's a lot of acronyms in our business, a lot of different kinds of data types, a lot of, confusion if you try to describe some of the complexity to professionals that aren't really aware of, how software runs on machines, really aware of what vulnerability theory is, aware of, some of just the day-to-day stuff we work with in cyber. Legacy products demand extensive configuration and training. Well, that we all know that one. If you want to change your cyber program and it takes 2 years to do so, it might be too late by the time you've managed to get the first implementation in place. Reliance on information silos and point solutions amplifies disarray. There's a lot of brilliant solutioning in the market, but how does it all relate together? And we've been struggling with that. The whole industry has been struggling with that for a long time. Years ago, we were lucky to stumble into, wasn't stumbling, we were just sort of willingly walked in the door, do some R&D with some very very advanced organizations. And that began to our journey into control automation. Control automation, in a sense, you can think of it as rationalizing point solutions in terms of controls and then in terms of risk. So it's really about taking telemetry, taking data, and rationalizing it and turning it into the story you need to get better resource and shoot for resilience. The fragmented approach leaves organizations vulnerable to cyber threats. That one's so obvious, I don't need to say much. The clamor for authority in cyber risk, skeptics and methodological debates, that's problematic. When we go to the floor of the conventions, I often wonder. I get to talk to everyone across every sector. I get to talk to the vendors as well, and I get a very complete picture of what's going on in cyber, and a very fortunate position for someone like me. But if you're just walking on the shop floor there at one of these conventions and you're trying to make sense of all of the claims that vendors are making, and the messaging just bleeds into each other because the marketing usually lands on a few big messages, and everyone's claiming to be in cyber risk now, even if they are a point solution. It can be very difficult to get an idea of how to move forward. Modeling risk challenges. One of my favorite parts of my job is I get to talk to risk practices across every sector in our economy. There are known risk models, and then there are models that are slightly different. And each practice has its own view of risk, but nonetheless, there's a great deal of best practice there, and it's been wonderful talking to risk professionals around this, because I think there is some consensus coming on these matters these days. All right, a new paradigm. So, I often get into sort of what you would call the religious discussion, right? Which is, what is a cyber risk? Does it, and what can it do for me? There are those who will say, it's too hard. It's too complex. It's too difficult. Well, I personally don't believe that. I look at the history of risk, in terms of the invention of probability, and I look at what was done, even in the 16 and 1700s with respect to risk. I look at the whaling industry and the spreading of risk, and look at the growth of the insurance industry as well, and then finance has many risk models native to it, it's just a matter of becoming a little more comfortable with it. And I think cyber's done a wonderful job over the last 5 years of understanding risk. There's a move away from sort of the point solution approach to risk, which is we take in a bunch of stuff that we scrape off of Shodan, or we take in a bunch of endpoint data, publicly facing devices and software, and then we bake you a risk score. We bake it up for you. Well, that's I haven't met the cyber professionals that really enjoy that sort of exogenous or external methodology. They much prefer to deal with risk right in front of them. From the back of the envelope to the giant machines we run in Python now. And the future of risk management is a beautiful thing. It's model agnostic, I think, to a large extent, and it's data rich. So to have data rich and model agnostic, to be able to ask risk models any number of questions, to be able to ask them, and this has been the vision, I think, of the industry for some time, to be able to ask them, what should we do? Where should we devote resources given our posture? And to have that answer be very specific and very detailed across an infrastructure is that time has come. So this new approach integrates that data. It takes cloud security posture management data, it takes telemetry from identity and access management solutions, benchmarks it in well-known frameworks for control strength, takes probabilistic models like FAIR, or the model we built with Booz Allen Hamilton, which is CyberSaint's, which is really sort of a hybrid of a qualitative model. You can answer a lot of questions. You can understand the vectors of attack very, very well in a very detailed way. And then you have a risk score. And then you call on an actuarial data set to provide loss event frequencies and to provide dollar amounts. Now you're beginning to tell a story. You're taking in a great deal of data. You're providing models that are well known, well sourced, easy to socialize, and you're benchmarking the organization in terms of its risk with respect to annualized loss exposures. So you're now talking dollars and cents. This is the so what. Sometimes a CISO would walk upstairs with a heat map. That's the old GRC days, right? And boards would accept some of the arguments. They would sign off on some of it, but there wasn't a lot of clarity in the exchanges. But boards and C-suites are asking, so what? And the so what really has to do with, can you model possible scenarios wherein we lose X amount, wherein we have to shut down operations for a certain amount of time? How much does it cost us to do that? How can we solution around that? How can we understand the return on security investment? So in order to understand the return on security investment, in order to rationalize all of the cyber practices and point solutions that we have, you need to be able to understand the loss values, and you need to be able to understand how much it would cost to solution around it. You also need to be able to understand which risks mandate which actions. This is the classic sort of, what does ransomware necessitate in terms of controls? What does phishing or spoofing necessitate in terms of controls? That's been a dream of the industry for a long time, that automated approach to risk management. So what's the huge opportunity here? The opportunity is, basically that the conversation has been going on for years, and there's been consensus. Solutioning around that consensus has been our approach. And again, I wouldn't, we're standing on the shoulders, not so much of giants, but we're standing on the shoulders of all the folks we talk to in compliance and risk, in the C-suites, in IT, across the entire organization. So I think I said this to my team after a conference we went to. We talked to a few analysts, and you could tell their heads were just spinning with cyber risk management, because many solutions at the conference were claiming to have made a great deal of progress in cyber risk. They were saying that most of the products weren't even cyber risk products. And then we were having conversations with some of the senior analysts who are like, we're just trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out. When I talk to large enterprise customers and even, mid-market customers, they come in the door and actually tell us the things we've been talking about for years. That's how I know cyber risk management moment is here. I see, companies that are wanting to get off of legacy practices, are wanting to increase communication across the business functions. They're wanting to make cybersecurity everybody's business inside the company, and they're benchmarking on well-known frameworks, and they're wanting to crosswalk to increase efficiency with respect to their controls. And they understand the opportunity to automate controls. They may not be there just yet, but they understand the opportunity. They also understand the link between what they're doing, resistance strength and the probabilistic models, what they're doing and the outcomes they get in terms of how they're affecting their loss exposure. Everybody knows the base theorem of cyber risk management now, and the approaches are well understood. And there's a great deal of agreement now on every call I'm on, across teams, with respect to what's a bogus approach and what's a great approach, and that, I'm very grateful that we were so fortunate to talk to so many different companies along the way. It's thousands of conversations, it's thousands of hours of conversations. It's almost a sort of prime example of, in order to get good at a thing, you need to log 10,000 hours at it. We've done that, and we've had a great deal of help from our partners and from the companies we work with, and some of them are listed down here. So, I claim to my team that cyber risk management moment is here, not because I thought we had brought a full solution to the market, which I do believe, and I do believe we are a platform, and the platform approach is the only way to handle cyber risk management. I do believe that, but I said it because all the prospects who were coming through the door talking to us started sort of reading back to me all of our central thesis. And that's been going on for 6 months now. So that to me is the greatest evidence that cyber risk management moment is here. So we did set out to democratize cyber risk management, taking learnings from those on the cutting edge and offering the most automated, flexible, and scalable solution. We built to our customers' needs. We did not sort of run off into the cave of making and come up with something that we thought was cool. We built to what actual practices are doing and made it as flexible as possible. And the beauty of that is that you get to see what's in common across, the whole collection of sectors that we have in our economy. What do practices share in common? And how can you give more efficiency to those practices? And that sort of bringing everyone together has been a real pleasure. And seeing it in the solution and seeing it in the way that we build features has been a real joy, actually. So what are we after? We're after automation. We're after flexibility. We have multiple risk models in system. We're not going to go to market claiming we have some mysterious risk model that 100 data scientists in an underwater, secret site have cooked up. Our risk models are transparent, and that's the way we roll. So what are our values? Transparency. That I've talked about it throughout the entire call here. We want to have conversations. We want to exchange information. We do. That's how we build trust, and that's how we build the product. So collaboration is key. Listen. I know I've done a lot of talking on this webinar, but I also like to listen. It's a pleasure for me to hear what teams are struggling with and how they want to improve and what their ambitions are. It's always been a pleasure. I've derived an amazing amount of pleasure talking to cyber risk professionals, talking to compliance professionals, talking to CISOs, hearing their struggles and helping them think through, together how to get there. In order to do that, you have to listen. You can't just go in with an idea and talk your head off. Thoughtfulness. Well, we're in cyber. It's incredibly complex. Probably one of the more complex problems on the planet right now. You're going to have to think. There's no push button. There's no easy phrase. There's no one size fits all. There's none of that. There's dynamic, synthetic systems complexity to all of this, and you have to be very thoughtful. And my team, they are incredibly thoughtful, and the professionals I talk to as well. And then integrity. Integrity is really, us working with others who are trying to solve problems and doing it together. And it's about best practices. It's about crowdsourced wisdom. It's about not being afraid to ask questions and not being afraid to change a little bit too. That we've worked with many large customers who said we need this and we need it soon. And it's a core value of ours to listen and to change. And to be honest and open and transparent about what we're doing. And that's really core to integrity. So if you want to democratize something, you're going to have a conversation. It's a big tent. So what are our platform attributes? We're not a point solution. We are a platform. So we pull in a lot of other data from multiple sources. We are automating as much as possible these days. That's our biggest push right now is in control automation and the real-time view into risk We're working with our partner Booz Allen Hamilton on that, and we have a great risk model and system that actually changes as the data changes, which is a wonderful thing. Data-driven approach, that's core to what I've talked about, and best practices, FAIR, CSF, NIST 830 series, ISO, it's all out there. The industry has done amazing work, and we just sort of operationalize some of the wisdom of the crowd. Collaboration with leading experts, we're always talking to thought leaders. Transparency, credibility, I covered that. And then financializing cyber risk, that's where we are right now. The SEC decision and the new regulations are all about financializing cyber risk. It's a fiduciary matter now. It's moved upstairs, and there are models that do it. And there are ways to talk about risk that get you into return on security investment as well. If you're going to understand return on security investment, you have to understand loss expectancies, and you have to be open to modeling what losses look like. Our approach versus our competition, very simple. We're a platform. We are taking as much data in as possible, multiple risk models in system, executive and board reporting. So we work right from the frameworks, right from the controls, all the way up to the reports that executives need to see. Multiple layers of translation in our solution. And our most recent release, Risk Remediation, covers really that story that needs to be told upstairs around which projects will buy down risk most effectively, and understanding the security return on investment there. Customer case study, ADP needs to do a lot of assessments. How do we help them? We help them with automation. We help them with the quarterly reports. They were going to do 50 in the first year and then move it up to quite a few after that. And we got a 12x increase in efficiency. And we work with a brilliant team over there. And this is a beautiful case of sort of understanding risk across a large suite of products and services, and doing quite a bit of control automation as well. And the ISO auditor actually came in and said this was a best practice. We're very proud of that, and we really enjoy working with teams that are as driven as this team at ADP. So we'd really like, if you want to see the platform live, you can request a demo via the link below this screen. You reach out to me also. So there's a link you should see. And you can also just email me, patrick@cybersaint.io. And I've talked plenty. So I want to thank you for coming to the webinar today. And I look forward to a continued conversation with everyone. Thank you.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah.
Really quick, I jumped back on because we're getting a lot of really good questions, and I was wondering if you'd be okay to answer them.
Sure, absolutely.
Amazing. If you want to stop screen sharing, I can pull those questions up. Awesome. Super interesting conversation here. So the first question is from Deborah at the Stimson Center.
Mm-hmm.
So many government requirements for a company domestically and via other countries' requirements such as GDPR, the Digital Services Act. How do you prioritize what organizations do that take into account not only the minimum required standards, but also best practice?
Yeah, we're dealing with that right now. That question is really timely. You have to acknowledge your current program. You have to see where it is at the moment, where you've focused a lot of your time and effort. And then you have to do an analysis about, well, how can we improve? So if you're under GDPR, you're under CCPA, and you do a lot of work in that area, you can start to migrate yourself using, crosswalking over into standards like 853 if you want to broaden your program. That's the way to approach it. And then there's the harmonization of regulation. The White House put out a big old RFI on that recently, and we participated in it. But, it's sort of begs the question. If I'm working inside one framework in finance, say, how do I get optimal coverage into other frameworks? Well, again, that is something we've thought about at length here with crosswalking and the syncing of frameworks. So you can actually link frameworks together, and if you change something in the parent framework, you're also changing it in the child. So instead of, it's sort of the test once, use many approach, and I think that's very, very important for organizations because it brings a great deal of efficiency. It's also a way you can move into other standards that can increase your resiliency.
Awesome. And the next question is from Noda at Manulife. They said, how do you avoid this is a good question. How do you avoid falling into the cyber risk of the day and providing a full platform? IoT, AI, SIM, et cetera.
I think flexibility is the way to do it. I mean, when I look at companies that have solved for one central use case and then they commoditize that, and then they get massive funding, I'm always nervous for them. I'm like, wow, they solved this one problem really well, but now they're getting a lot of money thrown at them to move maybe up market, right? And to broaden their solution. I think what we did from the beginning was to solve most flexibly for the maximum amount of use cases. Now, it might not have been a rocket ship early days because we were trying to solve across a lot of different sectors and we weren't targeting one particular use case. But I think to avoid the flavor of the day, you've got to use the best practices, the standards that are out there. You've got to have data flexibility, and you've got to be sort of risk model agnostic instead of sort of marrying yourself to one sort of glowing score that you can't explain to anybody or makes everyone angry as well. It's better to actually do the things in system that risk professionals do themselves.
Absolutely. And our last question here is from Kevin at Creed Advisory Services. He said, what are the key skills needed within organizations that will be required to connect the strategy with risk management?
Collaboration and the ability to communicate, right? And those two things are not unrelated. I'm on calls all the time where we need access to something and there's some resistance. There's a little bit of resistance. But communication can overcome a lot of barriers. If you're able to make the case for what you want to do with certain data and the value it can bring to the organization as a whole, you can get a lot of buy-in. And I think more and more you're seeing that. And you see it in our solution as well. You have to work across different functions and communication is key. And, then it comes to the actual communication to the top. How do you communicate with them? How do you turn cyber into a business logical argument? That's communication and that's collaboration as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Patrick, for spending the time walking us through this. It was super interesting. To the audience, feel free to reach out to Patrick. You have his email, or you can click the link in the attachments tab below this screen to request a demo. We have one more question.
Sure.
Here we go. Yes, you can't stop. Okay. Nope. This question is another good one. In your experience, what is the most dangerous misconception or myth about cyber risk management, and how can organizations avoid falling victim to this?
I think this is a good one. I think the most dangerous misconception about it is that it can be done credibly using old data. I see a lot of that still going on. And, we live in a changing threat landscape. The idea that you can do today's security on yesterday's risk analysis is a dangerous idea. And it's still out there knocking around. And I think a lot of us know it and we don't really talk about it, but the future is having as near to real time as possible and understanding the risk.
Definitely our approach. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate it. If you want to check out our platform and see it for yourself, you can request a demo in the link in the attachments tab below the screen, or you can check out our website with the other link that's in the attachments tab. But thanks again, Patrick. This was super interesting and we hope everyone enjoyed. Have a great rest of your day.
Pleasure. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, everyone.